Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel today. This is Paul from Kentucky Tacklebox, and today I want to talk about an interesting modification I've started playing around with, and you might find it interesting as well. So what I've started out with is this stuff here, and this comes in different sizes from the auto parts store, and what it's called is heat shrink tubing. And the way it works is it's designed to shrink down and provide a tight fit over automobile wiring by applying a little heat from something like a heat gun. And I have a heat gun here, and you can get these at like any hardware store like Lowe's or Home Depot, places like that. A lot of times just even a hardware store like an Ace Hardware may carry these, or if not, you might find them at a crafting store like a Hobby Lobby or a store that does arts and crafting and stuff. But anyway, these are heat guns, and they basically usually have a couple of settings: a high, a cool, and an off. And it's like a supercharged hair dryer, I guess is the best way to describe it. But anyway, I got to playing around the other day. I did a video last week about kind of modifying rooster tail lures, and it got me thinking, well, there might be a better way to do it than just using the rubber band that comes with the skirting material. So I've got a bag here of just some miscellaneous skirting material, and what I've done is I've just pinched off a few small strands of it right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something with basically a wide gap hook, and I'm going to create a tail line. Now, if I zoom in on the hook a little bit here, you can see how the hook is shaped up there, the eyelid. It kind of has a straight piece, and it comes down and it bends around to the hook. And what I plan to do is this. I've taken a piece of the heat shrink tubing and cut it down to a very small size. You just do with a pair of scissors. You can just kind of snip it. It's easy to cut. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to fish the pieces of the skirt material here through this. I'll see if I can get this through. This is kind of this is probably the trickiest part of the whole process, to be quite honest. But it's just trying to get the feeders of the lines through there. And then once you get most of them through, okay, it should look kind of something like that. So you can see how they're fed through there. Okay, so then what I plan to do is this piece of the heat shrink tubing. I can get this oriented just right here. Okay, I'm going to take my hook here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the tubing right over the hook, right to about there. And then so you can kind of see the eyelid of the hook, and then I'm going to try to pull most of the skirting material through, so only a little bit is sticking out at the end here. I'll kind of feed that back through. All right, and then I'm going to angle it so that it's right at the end, kind of like so. All right, so now what I need to do, the next step I need to do is to get the heat gun fired up and apply some heat there to shrink it down. And once I do that, that will just basically crimp the skirting material to the hook itself, and it'll give it a nice firm hold where it needs to be. So let me do this. Let me get the gun going. And if you're doing this, you don't want to get your fingers too close to the heat gun because it will hurt if you run it across your fingertips. I can tell you that. Okay, so basically I'm just working it back and forth along the heat shrink tubing. And the heat shrink tubing is already beginning to shrink. So basically just spinning it around to try to heat it evenly on all sides. And then I'll turn the heat on. Okay, so once I've heated it, I've got the heat shrink tubing shrunken up now so that it is getting a nice tight fit. So now what it basically does is it helps to lock the skirting material to that bend in the wide gap hook. And then the excess pieces that are sticking out on top of where the heat shrink tubing is, I'm just going to snip those off with some scissors. So just kind of cut off the excess so they don't get in the way when I go to tie my line on it. Okay, so what you end up with is something kind of like this. You end up with a wide gap hook with a piece of heat shrink tubing on it, and then some skirting material that you would use maybe like on a spinnerbait or something like that. Okay, and you can buy this material typically in bulk at your local tackle store. So anyway, once you have it set up like this, then you can either fish the hook like this, but I prefer to add usually like a soft plastic to it and do this. So this is what I've done. I've just taken a soft plastic paddle tail I have, and this is one I previously rigged up, and I threaded it on the wide gap hook, and then I also took the skirting material and I took some scissors, and actually I'm going to trim it up just a little bit more. And what I want is just to have it so that it's not interfering with the paddle tail action of the paddle tail. So now what I have is I have something that can be pulled through the water on a wide gap hook with a paddle tail, and it also has a little bit of the skirting material that's locked on the top bend of the hook. It gives the lure a new look. And basically, that's what I'm looking for. It's just kind of a fun, easy way to do it, to modify existing lures that you're throwing, give them a different look and a different feel, and maybe that's what the fish are going to be wanting on that particular day. Now, maybe they're not, but it's definitely worth a shot, and I think it's a fun option to play around with. And there's other things you can do with the heat shrink tubing too. You can attach. If you don't want to use the skirting material, you can use like feathered material that you might see on a fly fishing lure, and shrink it down using the heat shrink tube to lock it to the hook in one way or another. Or you could use it on the shank of a hook. If you don't want to hook it at the end, you may want to run some feathered material down this part of the hook right here, and then thread some heat shrink tube over the threaded material, whether it be the skirting or the feather, and then use a little bit of a heat gun to shrink it to there. Or you could use it on the shank of a treble hook and add it that way, like I had done in a previous video using like a rubber band. So there's a few different options to do it. But heat shrink tubing, typically you'll find it at an auto parts store, usually in the electrical section where they keep electrical components is where they keep this. And it comes in various sizes. It comes anywhere from really small diameter tubing to more of a medium to even some super-sized ones. So if I compare like 3 different sizes here, you have a lot, and usually the kit comes with multiple sizes. So you can kind of custom tune it to what you're looking for, whether you have smaller, thinner wire hooks or you have thicker hooks. But it's kind of an interesting mod, and it's just fun to play around with. And like I say, modifying fishing lures is something I enjoy doing, and it's something that can also help catch you some more fish. Just trying something that maybe creates something new or that hasn't been seen before is a great way to kind of entice the fish to bite what you're throwing. So as always, thanks for watching the channel, and get outdoors when you can. It's a great place to be. We'll see you next time. Bye.